the future of employment is India. The next 25 years, I say it to my son as well. He's just passing out of college. And I always tell him, there's no point going abroad. Everybody's coming to India. So the next 25 years is for this country. Just keep quiet.
Most people think that hospitality starts at check-in, but we know that it goes way deeper than that. Welcome to Beyond the Lobby, where we take you inside the world of hospitality through conversations with leaders that help shape it. I'm Vinodni Rao, Editor Hotelier India, and today I am delighted to be joined by Shwetank Singh, who's the MD and CEO of Chalet Hotels Limited. At a time when India's hospitality industry is not just recovering but redefining itself, Chalet Hotels stands at the forefront of this transformation. Backed by a very strong legacy of the K. Raheja Group, the company has built one of the country's most respectable hospitality portfolios. As Chalet enters its next phase of growth, a new leader steps into the spotlight. Shwetank Singh. We welcome Shwetank to our podcast and we talk to him about his journey, his vision for Chalet, and what lies ahead for the Indian hospitality industry. Welcome to our show. And you've studied at IIT and majored in finance in your MBA. What drew you to hospitality? It's a very unconventional hospitality path, you know. What got you into this industry?
That's a story in itself, Vinodni. Actually, when I started off, I studied, my engineering was in coal mining, and actually my first job was with Tata Steel in the mining sector. I followed that with an MBA, and interestingly, the first job out of MBA was with consumer banking, and actually I joined Citibank at that time and set up a branch from scratch. Got the P&L responsibility quite early, which was very interesting. But I had no idea what I was doing at that point in time. From there, I moved to investment banking, and hospitality was nowhere in the horizon. But, I got introduced to hospitality purely by chance. I actually stumbled into it. At that time, a company called Emaar MGF had set up a joint venture with a UK-based hotel chain called Whitbread. Their brand Premier Inn was coming into India. And interestingly, I still remember when I got called for the interview, after 45 minutes, the boss, who would be my boss, said, "I don't understand what is it that you do, but I like you." So he actually said that, and he put two job descriptions in front of me. One was head of projects, and the other was head of business development. And he said, "Which of these two roles you would like to do? Read it and come and tell me." Anyways, I took those back and I forgot about them. So 2 weeks later, he called me. He said, "I would like to meet you again." And when I went there, he said, "Okay, so what happened? Which is the one that you'd like to do?" And I couldn't remember the head of projects. So the one that I remembered was head of business development. So I said, "Yeah, I think I'll do business development." He said, "Okay, welcome on board." So that's how I came into hospitality. Wow. It was purely by chance.
Wow. And from there, you have kind of toured different markets, different brands, yes, whether it was Hilton, Marriott, Taj. So how did your journey to the Chalet, happen?
So actually, once I joined at Premier Inn, it was almost it was a startup situation for Premier Inn in India. So, and since I had started from the business development side, within the first couple of years, my work got noticed. It was a small team. And incidentally, another fortuitous piece of action happened. Our head of brand resigned at that time. And I was thrust into operations for the first time. I had no idea what I was looking at. And if I recall those days, when my boss first told me that you have to take care of operations, and we used to have only one hotel that had opened at that time, and there was a general manager taking care of the hotel. But he said, "This general manager will now start to report to you." I actually didn't even know what departments existed in a hotel. So I went down to Bangalore, which was our first hotel, spent 21 days doing 3 shifts of each of the departments to understand what is it that goes on in these departments. And that's how I understood, okay, that there is a big machinery behind the scenes for running these places, and what a back of the house looks like, what is it that the department managers do. That was my first exposure. And from there, I went on to sit on the India board. acquired multiple hotels for Premier Inn. The business later got sold off, but that was not my doing. That by that time I had left. Interestingly, when I was leaving Premier Inn, they offered me a role in the UK. And the funny part was that I decided not to take it because my wife thought it would be very cold in the UK. And she actually said, how will our clothes dry? So that was literally the reason why I decided not to take UK. Again, luckily for me, Interglobe happened. And when I joined Interglobe Hotels, that was another funny story because I remember when I went for the interview, they were looking for a head of asset management. And I had no idea what that term meant. So I sat with the HR head there. And she interviewed me and she kept asking me questions. And I realized midway through the conversation that she also has no idea what is it that the job does. So when we finished the interview, it was we connected with each other. So when we finished and she said, okay, it's done, I actually asked her, do you have a job description? And she said, no, not really. I said, okay, let me help you write it. And then we wrote the job description together. And interestingly, by the time I met the CEO and then Mr. Rahul Bhatia, who was the promoter, who is still the promoter of the company at that point, by that time, the role had developed into business development and asset management. And that's how I learned what institutional asset management meant. And actually, the first thing that we did was we went and hired a professional asset management company based out of Bangkok. First of all, my biggest learning was that I didn't realize there were companies that existed in Bangkok. People actually work out of Bangkok, which was a really funny part of the whole thing. But that person came in a company called C6, I remember. And he actually taught me what asset management was for the first time. And then, of course, we went on to institutionalize it, put the processes in place. I was running about 18 IBISes at that time. Another very lucky break we got was got into international acquisition. We put aside some. Mr. Rahul Bhatia actually put aside some money to acquire some hotels international, and we went and within a year and a half acquired 15 hotels in Europe in different places. And then I asset managed them also. So that was my first exposure to international markets, and doing it out of India was hard because I was literally on a plane to Europe once a month, going out looking for hotels as well as asset managing them. So it was all a journey, and that exposure I think gave me an opportunity to sort of interview for this Dubai firm called Arenco. And very interestingly, that was another very funny story, because when I got a call for that interview, I had no idea what luxury looked like, because IBIS was mid-market. The hotels we had acquired in Europe were also mid-market. And actually on the phone, I said to the person who was interviewing me, who was actually one of the board members there, I said, I have no idea what luxury looks like. I have worked in mid-market, but I understand the basics of hospitality. And why would you ask me to come over? I have never worked in Dubai. And something must have clicked, because they liked me. And I went over, and that's where I first got a taste of luxury. And why I'm telling you this story is because that's where we ran Taj Exotica. I was heading a business of 8 hotels, 3,000 keys, three of which 1,500 keys were stuck. I managed to, with the help of my team, sort of untangle a little bit of that and open all those 3 hotels within 6-8 months of my joining. So that was some good work. But I was never very comfortable with the working environment in Dubai. It just lacked something, and I was not jumping out of my bed to go to work. And then Chalet happened, and I was probably considered, because by that time I had a slightly more robust view of hospitality overall. When I got a call for Chalet to meet Neil, I was very excited because I wanted to come back to India. And at senior levels, you can't wait for the exact role. You just go with what you get. And this one worked well because it was part of a succession planning. And then I ended up here. That's how I got to Chalet.
Great. That's fascinating story. You studied coal mining, you said.
Yes.
And then also studied finance and got into hospitality by chance. But what is it that kept you here? What attracted you most towards the industry?
It's a very interesting question. And actually, once I got into hospitality and got exposed to the finance side was easy because the business development came in naturally because that was my sort of core competence and I had done that all my life. So that was the easy part. But I also realized at the same time that it's probably the sort of a harder part of hospitality because not everybody gets numbers. So interestingly, I think it was more like a deep end of the pool situation for me. I started with the harder part of the business side, but that gave me an exposure to the business. But as I got into the business, the simplicity of the business stuck with me. And with the simplicity came the passion of people who were running. I always speak this to my team, also talk about this to my team as well, that we can make whatever strategies we want to at our sitting in our offices, but the last mile delivery is probably happening by the guy who's serving that coffee. And if that person is not engaged and that person is not passionate, all your strategies can go into the dustbin. And that passion was so clear to me when I spoke to the general managers, when I spoke to the department managers, and I realized none of these people want to leave hospitality ever. And that simplicity and that passion, when it came together, to me, it was like, I love this. And that's how I stayed with hospitality.
That's great. So tell us about the chalets, the core philosophy that keeps it going. And last year, 2025, was a landmark year, not to mention the birth of your new brand. We'll talk about that a little later. But what is it that keeps that core philosophy going? And as MD and CEO now, how do you plan to take that legacy further?
Sorry, two parts to that. Let's talk about the legacy. Yeah. To me, if you see the history of, I won't comment too much on the group's history because may not be familiar with everything. But like most companies who have sort of ridden the curve of India growth story, almost all companies, if you look at their history, started from literally nothing, and then they reached where they reached. But that's not the funny part. The funny part is almost all of them hit rock bottom where they almost ended at zero.
Right.
And then they stayed resilient and went forward. If you look at the chalet story, I think 5 or 6 things have really worked for us. And why I keep recalling and keep talking to my team about them is I think that story should get lost. And the power of legacy is in these stories like this. Right? So if you look at our history, the first thing is the first call that the promoters took. And this was in 2002, not a call of today. This was when hospitality was not properly understood in India. They took the call of doing big boxes in a city like Mumbai. Looks very easy today. But at that time, to realize that the unit economics of a big box is so much superior to the unit economics of a smaller box is, I think, a brilliant call at that time. And couldn't have been easy because a larger box requires larger capex, a larger land parcel. All of that comes. So it's not an isolated call that you take, but to understand that that benefit is there on a P&L, which then flows into return on capital, is a brilliant call. I think the second call that they took was in 2009, when the first franchise hotel was opened as 4 Points. And why at that time, to take a call on running a hotel by yourself when the core of the company was pure asset owning and operating through third parties like Marriott or Starwood at that time, was again, I think, absolutely beautiful in hindsight, because that experiment at that time is today playing out 16 years later, when we are getting seriously into the franchise space and realizing the potential that this company can have by unlocking that cost structure at the correct levels. I think the third big decision that was taken was setting up institutionalized asset management. to be able to have that thought clarity to say just having a world-class operator is not enough. You still have to protect your vision, you still have to protect your capex, you still have to protect your property. You need to have a longer view on this. The general managers will keep rotating, but the ownership stays, and ownership is generational. So to set up that at that time, again, brilliant call. The fourth call that they took again, which today a lot of the companies want to replicate, was to have a mixed use development. I remember when we used to draw up strategies at Interglobe also, we used to talk about a brilliant mixed use where you have multiple asset classes in the same. And what we did as Chalet, or what the promoters did as Chalet, was to actually utilize the extra developability of a land and decide to go with commercial setup, to have that cross pollination going and creating a halo effect on either asset class. It was very easy to say, let's put in another 200 rooms at Sahar, because the new building would allow it. But at 588 rooms, to understand that that's the sweet spot in that market, let's now support it with an office infrastructure, I think was brilliant. And today, when you go through difficult times like we're going through currently or through COVID, the reason why we stay in black is because we have a steady annuity income coming through our office spaces. So I think that was another very good call. Then 2019 to say, let's get listed was another, to unlock that value. At a time, again, now you have multiple companies that are listed. At that time, it wasn't the case. To take that call at that time and say, let's get listed, unlock the value, go public, absolutely brilliant. So, when you put all of these 5, 6 in hindsight and think of what's happening to India at a macro level, they say luck gets created when you're prepared for the opportunity. So the opportunity came post-COVID and the preparation was there. And now you see this company actually taking wings. We are so poised to take off today. And I keep telling my team that if as a team we are not able to take it to the heights that our dreams can think of or our imagination can take to, then I think we would have done disservice to the company, to the shareholders, and most importantly to ourselves. Because we had this brilliant opportunity where the ambition of the promoters were there, capital was available, we had a strong balance sheet, we had macros to support the business, and we had a scale where we could take a risk and learn. You put all of these 5 together and you can't succeed, the problem is ours.
Wow. That's been like some great visionary, at that point. 2 decades ago, and which started and which is breaking down now. Yeah. So what is, I think one of the most exciting developments last year was the launch of Athiva.
Yes.
So what really inspired Athiva, and what is that gap that you're trying to fill in the market, with the launch of Athiva?
So actually, more than the gap in the market, I think we are trying to continue on a journey of learning. So when we started as pure asset owners and set in asset management in what I said previously, the next step was to go franchise and understand the unit economics. As the unit economics was being understood properly by running on cost structures that we can support, and we don't need to be driven by a third-party operator. During this time, we have quietly, over the last 2-3 years, developed the above property capability. And now, why do you need the above property capabilities? Because now we are getting seriously into the franchise space. When Taj opens in Terminal 3 in Delhi, that's a 400-room monster. And to be able to run it and successfully operate it, launch it, position it, we need that capability to be at the unit, but also above the unit. And by bringing in, a very smart and a very experienced chief operating officer with a very heavy operations background, that was the issue that we were trying to resolve. And when you put that in perspective, you have been an asset owner, you have been a unit operator. The next step in that continuum is brand. Otherwise, we could have stayed white label. And today, the way we see the brand is we are only putting that name across our properties. Why are we doing that? It's very easy for us to go third party. We don't want to do that until we have proven to ourselves and most importantly to our customers that we can deliver on the promise, not once, not twice, but every day and every time. Once we have done that and we have established what I feel is the core of the brand, it's only then we will want to be entrusted with the keys of somebody else's investment. So in our mind, it is a learning, it is a door to the future, and it is something that we are doing which probably the next generation will get the benefit of.
So the first Athiva is at Khandala, right?
Yes.
So how many Athivas do we get to see in the next
So right
2 years probably?
right now the first one at Khandala is open. The second one is the 4 Points Sheraton and at Navi Mumbai is being rebranded.
So that will also be Athiva.
That will also be an Athiva, and that will be the city version of Athiva, which we call Athiva Hotels. The one at Khandala is Athiva Resort. But we have not gone and just rebranded the FPS. We have invested a substantial sum of money, 93 crores to be precise, to redo that property and relaunch it. And it becomes the one at the one at 4 Points. The 4 Points. The one at Khandala, we invested about 170 crores in that. That was besides the acquisition cost, and we changed what I call every blade of grass there. That was the first one. The second one, FPS, will be rebranded as Athiva, as I said. Post that, we have some greenfield opportunities, particularly the two in Goa, which we have announced as a potential Athiva. There's one in Trivandrum, which is also likely to be an Athiva. All in all, and then there is one hotel called The Resort, incidentally, which belongs to the family, which we today asset manage as a company. But since it's part of the family, it's not a very formal engagement. That is also potentially an Athiva. Now, I keep referring to it, all of them as potential Athivas, is because we are very amoebic in our thinking. And, as markets evolve, we want to do what is right for the property. And if somewhere along the line we feel that another brand would fit these properties better, not all of them, one or two of them, then we will be very open to looking at it as another brand altogether. We are also considering a third option, which is standard operating procedures, training, etc., from a people perspective. But most importantly, what a brand brings is distribution. And today, to match the power of a distribution of a Marriott Bonvoy or Accor Live Limitless will take years. So if there are some locations which we feel fits the Athiva brand, but still requires the help of an international distribution giant, then we will potentially consider what's called a soft branding. And under the soft branding, it could be called Athiva by something, whatever that is. And what that does is it allows us to get access to the international distribution and more importantly to the membership program. And that will give us another leg up in that journey. And as we develop that capability over time, we will adjust from location to location and see how that goes.
So will there be like a different identification for a Chalet Hotel and an Athiva brand?
So Chalet Hotel is the corporate entity. That's the holding entity. From a B2C perspective, there is no Chalet. From a B2C perspective, there's Athiva and then the hotels that we own through a Marriott, an Accor, a Hyatt, or a Taj. So we will stay very, very B2B. And from a B2B perspective, we'll be the holding company, although that's where the value resides because Chalet is the listed entity. And ultimately, that's what we are driving. And that's the conversation that I constantly have with my team, is that please demystify your life. Don't get caught up in the white noise. Essentially, we are all driving shareholder value. And that's where we need to focus.
That's great. Chalet has also always been, very high on sustainability. from your LEED certified buildings to 100% electric mobility in properties.
The first one we call is EV100. In EV100 was, we said all our vehicles employed in our hotels will be electric vehicles. The target to finish that was 2026. We did it in 25. So we were ahead of our times. Today, we are completely EV100. The next one, the next call we took was, next pledge we took was EP100, which is Energy Productivity 100. What it does means is that if one unit of electricity produces X amount of revenue, then the same unit of electricity should produce 2X amount, so that 100% math stays. And this is done on a base year, and that base year was 2016 for us. And we are well on that journey. I think the target for that is 27, 28. We are ahead of that curve. So we will do that as well. The third one that we did was EV, EP, and I always forget, RE100. And that RE100 is called Renewable Energy 100, which means all the energy that we'll use in our hotels will come from renewable sources. Today we are, and we there's a lot of work that goes behind that. There are some hotels like Hyderabad, for example, the state doesn't allow it. So we've not been able to crack it. But we are well on that journey. I think the target for that is 2030. Today we are at 63, 64 odd percent. So we are getting there. So these were the three big pledges. The fourth pledge that we took was that we will go carbon neutral by 2040. And for that, we are well on that journey. It gets properly documented, audited as we go along. And we have international matrices that help measure this. So one of the biggest ones is called Dow Jones Sustainability Index. And Dow Jones Sustainability Index, our score went from 32 in 2022 to 82 today, last when the results came out. And at 82, we are second in the world, not the second in India. We are second in the world in hospitality and tourism setup.
Wow,
we are ahead of Accor, we are ahead of Minor, we are ahead of all of them. And at 82, we take a lot of pride in DJSI, and we absolutely track it to the last level. And when that score came, I was very, very proud to say that. And a lot goes into it. It's not just one part of sustainability. And we are now in that 2040 journey that I earlier mentioned. We are now at what is called scope 3, which is actually the embedded carbon that goes into the buildings, because you can work with what you're using, but that's only 30% of the carbon. The 70% of the carbon is already gone into the building. So you have to start at scratch. So we are now at the point where we are looking at the carbon footprint of our suppliers. We're trying to get local materials so that the distance of travel is less. We even track employee carbon footprints. So we've got it down to a science now. And all of that then comes beautifully together in what our marketing team has done by launching what is called Parivartan, which is our ESG brand. And that's something that we continue and hope to develop. And finally, the final word on ESG that I would say is that we take it so seriously that it is one of the 3 pillars of Athiva, which is joy, sustainability, and wellness. So sustainability is right at the core of it. And then there are other parts to ESG. So I spoke about the environment. There's the social angle. We do a lot there. And then finally, governance. You're well aware that we are a very clean company run by a very, very independent board. And our governance is of the highest standard. In fact, we take governance so seriously that if you were to ask me what is it that the promoters get involved in, it will be capital deployment, either through acquisition or in projects. And the third thing is governance. And finally, senior team. So just out of the 4 things that they do, one of them is governance. So we take governance very seriously, and hence our ESG initiative is right up there.
And you started on this journey, like Chalet started on this ESG and sustainability journey much before the others had embarked on it.
Yes.
So how much of ESG, how much is ESG going to shape the future of the industry? Because let's face it, still a lot of hotels are like at the nascent stage or not even have started there. But how much is it going to be defined?
So the way I see it is that, a lot of it is not very visible in India. And when I was in Dubai, this conversation was a lot more heated. And it's coming. It's coming because what India does is typically it catches on later, but it puts in more stringent systems in place. And I think as a country, the target is 2070 to go carbon neutral. And that push and pull will continue at the India level. But from a hospitality perspective, I think we have to first accept that we are carbon footprint guzzlers. We just create a lot of carbon and wastage. So the first thing is to accept that, because only if you have accepted it that you'll start on the journey. The second thing is, for a lot of the time, for a longish time, it has been a nice to have. From nice to have, the next step is, what are the carrots that the government can provide? And you will start to see that, lending rates specifically from banks are now being linked to a lot of, ESG initiatives. And if you're not green, the likes of IFC will not lend to you, for example. And others who will lend, even HSBCs of the world, they will lend, but they will charge a premium because you're not fulfilling the green norms. And so as a result, the carrot is that you can go lower on the borrowing rates because you're, hitting those targets. So if you start with acceptance, then you go to carrot, acceptance, nice to have, carrot. I think the stick is coming. Otherwise, people like us who sit in boardrooms and are making decisions will continuously keep talking about ROI. So we'll say, oh, why should we do this? What's the ROI? There is no ROI. You just have to give it back to the society. And that has to become second nature. And if people don't understand it, the government will make them understand. So I think the stick is coming. And then it will no longer be a choice.
But do you feel that, it's easy to get onto the environmental and the social aspects, but when it comes to governance, there is still a bit of cloud, and how that can be sorted?
In my mind, what makes governance hard in India is the real estate part. I think hospitality is still very much a part of the real estate. As customers, we see the softer aspects of hospitality, but the hard asset still remains, and that's the start point. Without the hard asset, there is no soft asset, right? Soft part to hospitality. And that's where the governance challenge, I think, first steps in. To be able to just be absolutely sure that you will not even move a brick away from what is the law of the land, to take advantage. And some of the laws are still very archaic. Parking norms, for example. In India, drivable distances, driving city hotels are very uncommon. Very few people drive. Most people fly, right? Because this country is so big. And most of our parking just stays unutilized. But it's expensive to build parking, So things like that, that's just one example. There are multiple laws which can become quite draconian and very capital intensive in trying to fulfill. But to stay on the right side of the law, to fulfill the fire life safety requirements to the exact point that is needed by the law and going beyond, I think will be important. And I think it will almost be inevitable if you want to run a world-class company. And that part of governance becomes difficult, I think. And as companies like us who are very minded, I would urge all companies in India to absolutely follow the governance to the T, because that will build value. Today, a few pennies saved will ultimately erode value for tomorrow. So I would suggest anybody to go down that path.
That brings me to the culture aspect of Chalet. How much of one of your initiatives has also been running an all-women's hotel in Hyderabad.
Yes.
Okay, how much of building people and culture is important, in shaping a hospitality company?
So the all-women initiative was actually done by the previous team, and I think it was a brilliant initiative, because it's easy. Yeah, it's easy to say, I won't get an engineer, I won't get enough people in. I don't know. housekeeping or whatever. But we managed to do it thanks to our partners, Marriott as well, and we figured out a way to do it. It was the first all-women's hotel. I think one or two have opened since then, and actually that helped build our diversity as well. And today we are at 24%, I think, for the portfolio from a diversity perspective, and we want to build it up further. In fact, I think at the corporate office we are closer to 40% women. So, Sarah is one good example of that. So we take that diversity part very seriously, and also for persons with disabilities, I think we are working with them that piece very closely as well. But coming to the culture part, and culture is very dear to my heart, and anybody who's on my team already knows that. And in fact, one of the things that I did was that I worked with our HR team, and what they did was they just heard my thinking out on the culture side, and we have come up with an acronym which is easy to remember. We call it One Chalet, and each of the letters have something attached to it, which is a culture pillar for us. So, for example, O stands for open door, and so on and so forth. But culture to me is extremely important, because to me that sets the tone. And today, to have a culture where people have a more systems thinking, as Peter Senge would call it, where they are thinking and understanding that it's not just a piece of work they are doing, how that fits into a bigger whole, how are they contributing to the larger vision, I think becomes important. It starts from there. Once they have that confidence, then they will start making the decisions. And that doesn't happen overnight. People will always not be happy making decisions, because you have to then provide a supporting environment where they feel safe. And in order to do that, it's not so much the words that you say, it's the actions that you take. It's very interesting. People say innovation is our culture, for example. But it's so funny that you can't go to anybody and say, can we have a little bit more innovation today? So it's not the culture. The culture is the behavior. What you're telling people is, can you think of a new way to do something? Can you look at the process and see if you can improve something? That's innovation. Integrity is not a culture. The behavior is the culture. And that's what sets the tone in an organization. You can't go and say to someone, can you show integrity? What you'll say to people is, do the right thing. And that's what sets the tone in an organization. And I take it very, very seriously.
Finally, before we wrap this session up, Shwetank, if you can give some advice to young hospitality aspirants.
So, there are two things I would like to say. The first thing is that you're part of a fantastic industry. Just to be able to have such a close human-to-human contact, conversation, being part of a community is special. And not a lot of employment opportunities or career opportunities out there will give you that option. So I think if you thrive in the company of people and you like to be a part of a warm culture, warm setup, and that makes you excited, then you're in the right industry. You should do it. It's going to be hard when you start, and the first few years are difficult. They are very physically demanding. The shifts are long. The pays are not necessarily the best. But once you're past that difficult phase, I think the career is extremely rewarding. And you're part of a decision-making setup, senior leadership very quickly. And you can make a difference very quickly. So from that perspective, I would say if you have those value systems and culture and ingredients to succeed in this industry, then you should definitely stick to it. I think the long-term career, medium to long-term career in this industry is brilliant. The industry is in a great place. The country is in a great place. The future of employment is India. The next 25 years, I say it to my son as well. He's just passing out of college. And I always tell him, there's no point going abroad. Everybody's coming to India. So the next 25 years is for this country. Just keep going.
Wow, it's wonderful advice and a great insightful conversation we've had today. Thank you so much, Shwetank, for joining us on this podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a
Thanks.
pleasure.
Thanks.